If you just remember who Jesus is, it's hard to not be in love with him. Look with me at Ephesians chapter 3. I think this is the same thing in marriage. In marriage, you're married at the beginning, it's the honeymoon, and it's exciting, and there's that passion and excitement, but then over time you can just get in your normal roles, and I am the provider, or I take care of the house, and I do these different things, and you get in your role and you're doing it, and you forget that you even love each other. That can happen in marriage. And if that happens, you need to remember your first love. And how do you do that? You remember. You go back. Why did I fall in love with this person? What is it about this person that I love? And I need to, there's a practice that we should do as a husband or a wife, to go back and remember, what made me fall in love with this person? I need to go back to that and come back to that place of first love. And the same thing in our relationship with the Lord. If we're starting to drift from that place of love, if our motive isn't love, I need to come back to that place. What made me fall in love in the first place? Why is it that I love this person, and go back and look at them from those eyes that I used to look at them? Go back and look at Jesus how I used to look at Jesus. Ephesians chapter 3. In verse 16, Paul says this. This is his prayer. He's praying for the church, and he says his prayer is that you would grant you, according to the riches of his glory, to be strengthened with might through his Spirit in the inner man, that Christ may dwell in your hearts through faith, that you, being rooted and grounded in love, may be able to comprehend with all the saints what is the width and length and depth and height, to know the love of Christ which passes knowledge. So this is Paul's prayer for the church. He says, I pray that you would be strengthened. I pray that you would, through faith, be rooted and grounded in love, and that you would be able to comprehend, that your mind would be able to understand, he says, the width and length and depth and height, the greatness of the love of God, the love of Christ, he says in verse 19, which, what? Passes knowledge. He says, I want you to know a love that passes knowledge. There is a way, the love of God is beyond what we can understand, what we can comprehend. It's beyond what we can explain or put into words. The love of God that we see displayed in Jesus, it's so much bigger than we know. But he says, I want you to experience that love. I want you to receive that love. I want you to know that love, and I want you to live in that love. And this is Paul's prayer for a church that's already saved and already walking with God. And he says, I want you to know the love of God that passes knowledge. This is a love that it passes your ability to understand, but it's a love that comes from God, and I want you to know it. I want you to experience it. I want you to walk in it. I want you to be rooted and grounded in that love. And then this is the phrase I want to get to in the end of verse 19. He says, to know the love of Christ which passes knowledge. That means it's connecting, right? It means if you do this, if you know the love of Christ that passes knowledge, then this will happen. He says, that you may be filled with the fullness of God. What Paul is saying is, as you know the love of Jesus, you will be filled with the fullness of God. As you know the love that is beyond our comprehension, beyond our ability to understand, as you know that love, as you experience that love, as you walk in that love, you're rooted and grounded in the love of Jesus. He says you'll be filled with the fullness of God. I don't know about you, but I want to be filled with the fullness of God. That's what I want. That's what I want for my life. That's what I want for our church family. That's what I want for my kids. That's the best thing you could ever have. What could be better than that? All knowledge or prophecy or gifts, none of that compares to the fullness of the love of God. And that's what we need to walk in. That's what we need to see as the greatest thing. And so he says, if you would know that love, if you would be rooted and grounded in that love, if you would experience that love, the width and length and depth and height, get to know the love of Jesus, and you'll come back to your first love. If you're struggling in that area, come back and look at Jesus. Look at the cross. Look at the grace that has been given to you. Look at how much God loved you. In John chapter 15, Jesus gave a command. He says, "This is my commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you." That's the command of Jesus. But then he gave an example. He says, "Greater love has no one than this, than to lay down one's life for his friends." In the same time that Jesus gives the command to love, he also gives love exemplified. And it was through him, through what he did, through his example, through his life, through his death. Love was on display at the cross. As Jesus took our sin, as Jesus looked at us and our inability to solve our sin problem, and he saw us and he loved us, and he loved us so much that he would take the sin of humanity, not just humanity, but your sin and my sin personally, and he would take that on himself, and he would go to the cross, and he would have nails put through his hands and through his feet, and he would be raised up, and he would die in our place. This being God himself, perfect God, God of heaven, God who didn't even need to come down to us, but he came down to humanity. He lived on this earth, and then he went to the cross, and he died in our place, and he took our pain, and he took our suffering, and he took it to the cross. That's love. And so whenever we are struggling to have the motive for what we do, we need to look to the cross. We need to look to Jesus. And as we look to Jesus and as we fall in love with Jesus again, love is the greatest motive to anything that you'll ever do. If you do anything, there are many motives that we can have for doing different things. You can do good works because you want people to look at you. Because of your own pride, you want people to look at you, you can do good works. That's one motive, right? Or we as the church could use your pride and we could say, if you do this, then we'll bring you to the front and we'll tell you, the church, how great you are, right? That's a bad motive. The reason we don't do that at church is because that's a bad motive. You would be being built on a bad foundation. That's not good. You could serve out of selfishness, selfish ambition, desire to be seen, right? Desire to have power. You want to grow in a position. You could serve for all these different reasons. You could do things for all these different reasons. But there's no reason that is nearly as powerful as love. And so our encouragement as a church is that you would know Jesus and you would love Jesus. And if you love Jesus, there's no way to not serve Jesus. But it has to be the motive for everything that we do. And so if we start to leave that place and we just get in routine and we start to not remember why we're doing what we're doing, we come back and look at the cross. We repent of where we came. We come back to Jesus. We look at the cross and we remember, greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for his friends. That's perfect love.